What is up, you beautiful people, man? Welcome to another video. Like always, I wanted to create this video for such a long time, but busy, life is busy, but I'm back. I'm here to make hopefully the last video in the series in the F10 M5 rebuild series. But first off, I want to say thank you. I just realized here, actually making this video, that the channel just crossed for the first time the 500 subscribers mark, and I still can't believe that people decide to tune in and spend their time watching me rebuild the F10 M5. Hopefully you've been able to learn a little something, or if not, maybe you just found these videos entertaining. But I still can't believe that people not only decided to tune in, but also decided to subscribe to keep watching this series, and for that, I am thankful. Now, for those of you who have been around for a while, you probably noticed that on my last upload, I shared with you that the F10 M5 has been alive for a few months now. In fact, the reason why I decided to make that video is because I wanted to build a trustworthy YouTube channel, because a lot of you guys have been leaving comments saying, hey, I would like a more in-depth video of a specific part where you're talking about that specific part. The reason why I was not able to provide some of the videos, I tried really hard to come up with the footage, the B-roll, or the schematic for a specific part. But the reason being is because I'm actually making these videos in retrospect. The car has been done for a while. I'm just making these videos as I find time to update you on the build. So if you're using these videos as a guide to rebuild your F10 M5, just know that everything that I talk about actually does work. The car's been running for miles with no issues whatsoever. So in this video, we're going to continue the part here. The last one, we finally put together the long block. We have all the rotating assembly closed in. You have the crankshaft, piston, rods, and we also have the heads all sealed in. In this video, we're going to finally add accessories. We're going to add exhaust, the turbos, the alternator, and then on the bottom of the engine, we're going to add the intake, the sensors, as we're ready to actually put the heart of the beast back into it. But before we do that, in typical fashion, let's pay some respect for some of you guys that decided to watch the videos and leave your comments. Let me know 4167 says, that's actually a pretty good name. I'm surprised because a lot of times I try not to say these names because I just can't. Okay, so he says, wow, a turbo V8 Miata built by NASA is crazy. So for those of you guys who don't know, in the last video I was sharing the Miata that my brother's working on, and he works at NASA. Actually, well, he works at SpaceX. SpaceX rent the space from NASA, so he works all the way at the coast. Reason why I was talking about that, because he actually used to drive the M5 for quite a while after the rebuild to go over to work and come back, and he was able to use it with no issues whatsoever. But yeah, that V8 Miata is crazy. I just cannot wait for him to finish because I want to drive it too. Salman Mohammed, that looks like, I apologize if I'm butchering any name, says, I bought my dream car in M5 competition 2019. The engine seized after 1 week of owning. I feel for you, bro. Yeah, man, I feel for you too, man. An M5 competition is a dream car. It's a beautiful car, but unfortunately, that's the reality of buying these cars, especially secondhand. Really have to do your due diligence. Even for somebody like me, I did do my due diligence, looked into the previous history of the car. Nothing was wrong with the previous history. It was well maintained. Next thing you know, I have a seized engine in my hands. But this is what life is all about. When things goes wrong, you just have to figure it out. And this is why I always tell people, buying an F10 M5 has been my dream car for the longest time. It was the best purchase I ever did. But at the same time, I always tell everyone, I have people come up to me and say, hey, this M5 is my dream car. But the reality is, these cars are expensive to own. Not only about the monthly price. If you're looking to buy these cars, just don't look at the monthly price, or just don't look at the price of the car itself if you're not financed. You gotta take into consideration maintenance. When things go wrong, which eventually they will. We buy these cars hoping for the best, but the reality is you have to be prepared for the worst as well. FJ Today 52 says, man, As an F90 M5 owner, I am fearful. I can only imagine the moment you found out. I wish I was mechanically inclined enough to do this much work myself in the unfortunate event that this happens, but I don't even have the tools to do it. Consider yourself lucky, blessed for having the means, knowledge, and the willingness to tackle such a job. It's really inspiring. I truly appreciate it, my friend. Your words are inspiring to me as well. But this is what it's all about. This is technically my first engine that I've built. Now, of course, I didn't just jump into it. I've did previous maintenances on the car, and I have all the tools laying around. And when I didn't have the tools, there's a lot of specialty tools that you guys can see from my previous videos here that I had to order. But this is what it's all about. When stuff like this happens, sometimes you gotta roll up your sleeves and get to work. If not, you gotta have the savings account to take it into the shop and have the work get done. But let's get back to the video. I truly appreciate all you guys leaving your comments. If I'm not able to get back to you, you can leave your comments. I'll try my best to get back to you. If not, you can always find me on Instagram and send me a message, okay? Now, the very first thing that we did after the last video here was actually the simple part, which is the shield plate that goes between the turbos and the block. It was very simple, very straightforward to put in. This is just a heat shield because, again, the turbos here get really, really hot. Now, if you find yourself working on your turbos for your F10 M5, I highly recommend you take the time to wrap them because this engine runs really, really hot. There's shields on top that comes from factory. There's also aftermarket shields for the turbos, but wrapping the exhaust right at the source will do two things. It's going to keep that heat local as much as possible. It's going to help reduce the overall temperature of the engine bay. And number two, it is going to help you keep that exhaust hot because you want the exhaust hot in order to flow those gases as efficiently as possible. Of course, I had some new exhaust seals over here. That's the beauty of this project. I was able to, since I had everything apart, able to put some brand new seals everywhere. After that, we just torqued down the exhaust into the heads. Now, I placed the turbos in there. You're going to see for the remaining of the video that the turbos are going to be in there. But there's a clamp that holds the turbos to the exhaust. And it is very important not to torque them down right away. You can put them in there, keep them tight in order to hold the turbos, but the turbos are not symmetrical, okay? And you have to attach the downpipes to the exhaust, and on the other side, you had to attach the fittings for the intake, right? And also for the intercoolers, right? So in this case, it was important for me not to torque them down because they have to be in the right position before you torque them down. Because if you torque them down and they're slightly misaligned, a lot of things could go wrong. Right after that came the fuel rail and the injectors. Now in this video right here, I'm just gonna do a high level overview for just entertainment purposes. If you guys want detailed specific torque specs, hit me up on the comment section or hit me up on Instagram and I'll be more than happy to help you. If you want detailed videos, do let me know. The next part involves taking the engine off of the engine stand finally, because it was blocking access to the flywheel and the starter, which was next. After that came the intake and the NOx sensors. At the bottom of the engine, we pretty much have it all sealed in. We have the lower oil pan and the upper oil pan installed with the rebuilt oil pump already in there. If you're watching this video for the first time, you will see that this is a hot V engine, meaning that where the exhaust typically is on the V8, we'll find the intake instead. And when the intake would otherwise have been, you will find the exhaust instead. And the reason being, it keeps those turbos spooling a lot faster to help you minimize the turbo lag, and also for a compact packaging. There's also an air temperature sensor that goes right in here, and I believe this is a boost sensor as well. Then came the intake manifold and those sweet intercooler. Now, while we're here, we can't forget about the motor for the variable timing, because that had to come off when I was doing a valve seal job to clean up those valves and the valve seating. It's so funny to me because at this point, I remember just sitting in the garage, just admiring the complexity and the beauty of this thing. And it's hard for me to explain this. And maybe you feel the same way. I absolutely love the way this thing looks. It looks like a piece of art to me. I do know that everything is purposely built. It does have a function. Maybe that's the beauty of it to me. But this is something that I would love to have the space where I could just have an S63 TU just laying around, just hanging in there, just because It's so beautiful to me. It just looks so compact, so beautiful, so well put together. It's a marvel. It really is. And the last thing we need while we're at this part of the engine is just to install the engine mounts that the engine is going to sit on. So what I did here, I put everything that will be otherwise inaccessible from the front of the engine, because what I want to do is just put the engine back into the car. So things like the vacuum pump, everything that's in the back of the car, every wire that's in the back of the car, I went ahead and installed it because I just wanted to have the engine back in the car, guys. It had been months, long, frustrating months. I just wanted to have this thing back in there. Now, before we can actually put the engine back in there, we need the supporting subframe, which had to come off. So we had to install the subframe back in there, and the steering rack and pretty much everything, the suspension, steering, and of course, some of the 5 Series, they have electronic steering, which is a little bit simpler, but the F10 M5, for maximum performance, it comes out of the factory with a hydraulic power steering system. Now, a lot of people will argue for days and nights whether hydraulic versus electrical is better. Right now, for example, my brother decided to get rid of the hydraulic power steering for the Miata in exchange for electric. He has his reasons. But with that comes complexity, and I had to take the time to put everything back together. Now, I wish I could show you the footage of me putting the engine back together, but again, it's been such long waiting time. I believe I filmed it, but I couldn't find the footage. So I just decided to just put the engine back in there. I had a little bit of help from my brother to make sure I aligned the engine with the transmission housing. But at this stage, it was really just finicking and just putting stuff back together to make sure everything fits. Now, this entire project, I would say the hardest thing to me was actually the bolt that holds the crankshaft to the harmonic damper. What holds the crankshaft to also the timing chain sprocket, right? This bolt is under tremendous torque. So to actually remove it, I had to put the whole block and the crankshaft into the trunk of the 5 Series, take it to the engine shop, have it removed by professionals. And when it came back to put it back together, also it required an enormous amount of torque. The single most complicated part about this engine is what comes next. After the engine went back into the car, it was time for me to wire the car, and most important of all, to put together all those hoses. And let me tell you something. I remember very vividly when I had the 5 Series, one day I came across this specific exact meme that says, everybody wants a BMW, and it is time to do BMW shit. And I remember just sitting there, just chuckling, just laughing. Oh, that's funny, right? Little did I know, I was sitting there, so innocent. Little did I know that I would be working on a more complex version of that exact same engine. For those of you who don't know, this right here is an S63. And this usually goes in your 550s, 750s. It's a variant of the twin turbo V8. The S63 is built on top of the S63. It is a more performance-oriented version, but it's funny, it really is, except when you're on the other side. So I want you to do this, okay? If you have an F10 M5, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to your garage. Now I want you to just pull out a chair and just sit there. Okay, just sit there and just look at that car. Just admire its beauty. Because behind that grille and behind that bumper, behind all that beauty, this is what's in there. This is what's powering your car, okay? So just sit there and tell your car, thank you. If it hasn't put yourself in the position to where you have to work on it, you have to take it someplace to work on it. There's a reason why you don't see these cars in the road often, okay? So also, if you are somebody who, if an M5 is your dream car, doesn't matter if it's F10 M5, F90 M5, it's the same shit. It is exactly what's in there. It's the Mojave twin turbo V8. If you are thinking of going down to your dealership to grab yourself an M5, just know that most likely is going to be the best purchase of your life. I tell that everyone, it's the best purchase I've ever did, the best car I've ever driven. But also know that you better have the savings account to back it up when things do go wrong. We're just gonna hope that it doesn't. But if it does, you better have the savings account or the 401k, or you better have some specialty tools laying around your garage. After putting all of that back together, what I did is I then put what holds the bumper, the front end, back into the car, and it looks menacing. It absolutely does. So now it is finally time to put those fluids back into the car, the lifeline of the engine. The oil is really simple. All you have to do is make sure that the oil plug is at the bottom. Of course, we're here with some fresh new filters, and we just added the oil back in there. Now, of course, we have to refill the fluid for the power steering pump. And of course, it's specialty fluid. You can't just find it out there. You have to order it from a specific website because it's a specific fluid, and you have to wait for it to get here. And after that came time to put the coolant back into the car. Now, in typical BMW style, this is not a simple task. Now, before this, I had the F10 5 Series. And the F10 5 Series is a relatively simple task. You just fill it up with the fluid, and it has this very smart electronic system to where it will slowly pump the fluid back in. There's a specific system you have to go through, specific step you have to go through in order for the system by itself will get rid of all the bubbles as you slowly refill the system. Genius. Now, in typical F10 M5 style, it's not as simple, right? And of course, you don't have just like you don't have one pump, or just like you don't have one radiator, you have a whole set of them. Here is the exact same thing. There's actually two separate systems for the cooling, right? There's one for the engine, and there's one for the turbo system and the intercoolers, all right? And they all have to be filled separately. But in a high level view, this is how you technically do it. In order to do it, you can just start putting fluid back in there. If you do, you're gonna end up with air bubbles in the system, and it's going to eventually tear down your engine again. We don't want that. So in order to actually technically fill up the system, you have to pull a vacuum. Again, you need a specialty tools to pull the vacuum to specific PSI, and you also have to do a vacuum test. You have to hold that vacuum for 10 minutes at least in order to make sure there's no leaks in the system. And boy, let me tell you, there's been a few times in my life where I felt amazing. The very first time in my life where I felt so good was when I filled out the paperwork for my mom. I waited for months, hired lawyers so I could sponsor her to come to the United States. And I remember very vividly hugging her for the first time after years. My heart was filled with joy. The second time was when I held the vacuum for about 10 minutes, and I've noticed there has been 0 leaks in the system. That meant that everything was properly sealed in, which means now all I had to do was just connect the specific fluid for a BMW F10 M5 again and just allow it, the vacuum, to pull the fluids from the reservoir. Now, actually, there's been a third time where my heart was actually filled with joy again. And that is, after all this time, after all this work, I finally sat behind the steering wheel and pressed that push start button for the first time after rebuilding the engine. So I took a deep breath and pressed that button, and nothing happened. That's because you see it's been a few months and the battery is dead. So I actually had to go recharge the battery, and turns out the battery is dead. It hasn't been changed for a while. So guess what? If I haven't spent enough money already, I had to go out and buy a brand new battery. So after we did that, then install the battery, and of course I had to program the battery into the car, came time to start the F10 M5 for the first time. I don't know if you ever felt this, let's be honest. It's an F10 M5, it's a car I love. And if it hadn't started, then I would have figured out a way. right? It's not the hardest thing I've been through, but starting that engine, and I don't know, maybe you've done something similar in your life where it was something really, really hard, really complicated, and it worked out. It really did. Start up the engine and shit didn't blow up. So this officially closes that chapter that we all started together. So what's next? I mean, this is just the beginning. Now we're back to where we all started. When I first got the car, I've been able to enjoy it. I've done some videos here and there, but the goal was to keep, adding some cool things to the car. Of course, it's my daily driver. But there's some cool models I want to add to the car here and there. So now we finally have the ability to do so because we have a fully working F10 M5. So for those of you who have been tuning in loyally, I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch the videos. You could be doing anything. You could be watching any other video, but you decide to tune in for a few minutes and you decide to leave your comments and you decide to subscribe. It means the world to me. And hopefully you've learned a few things from my mistakes. So if there's anything to take away from this video is that go after it. Just do it. If there's a car you're looking at for your dream car, go get it. Don't let this video stop you, because if something goes wrong, you will figure it out. We all do. See you on the next video.